Minchinhampton Market House is the home of many of the town's social events. It's a meeting place, a school, a concert stage, a produce market, a theatre, an exhibition hall, a cinema, a wedding venue, and much more. The income generated by these activities maintain the existing facilities, but is not enough to improve the market house to 21st century standards and public expectations. Over the years, bequests and donations have allowed the management committee to maintain and improve the market house. However, it is a never-ending task to make this historic building a really welcoming and efficient centre for the whole community. The market house relies on the continuous support of volunteers, individual donations, trust funding, and corporate donors. Since the 17th century, the building has been part of the centre of Minchinhampton. Along with the church and the Crown Inn, it reflects an image of the old market town as it was in its heyday. In the 1960s, Major Brian Keane and Cyril Turk researched the history of the market house, and many of their findings have been used to compile this visual record of the building's history. So why was a market house established in Minchinhampton? The plan to build a market house in this thriving community in 1698 was a significant undertaking. The concept of the project depended on one thing: commerce. The powerful driver of that commerce locally was the Cotswold Lion, a breed of sheep unique to the area. Cotswold wool was well respected. The saying was that in Europe the best wool is English, and in England the best wool is Cotswold. In the Middle Ages, the wool trade was big business, providing around 50% of the national economy. The Burial in Wool Act of 1667 meant that even in death, the wealthy were dressed in good English woolen shrouds. The old saying, "Don't pull the wool over my eyes," expresses the fear of being buried alive. The real experts in adding value to the wool product were the Flemish and Italians. In the 14th century, King Edward III went to war with France, partly to protect the wool trade with the continent. As a result, many Flemish weavers fled the conflict and came to the Cotswolds, bringing their sophisticated cloth-making and weaving techniques to the district. Theirs was a mostly cottage industry, however, and the wealthy wool barons built fine country houses and financed grand churches, the latter, no doubt, to ensure a place in heaven. In the late 17th century, the Lord of the Manor of Minchinhampton, Philip Shepherd, decided to have a market house built in the town. His father, Samuel, had purchased the title to the manor 40 years before from Lord Windsor, for whom he had acted as steward. So, what was in it for him? In addition to the manor's very successful trade with the continent, extra income could be obtained by encouraging smaller producers to carry on their business in a convenient central location. Here, the Lord of the Manor's steward could buy many small quantities of wool at good prices, consolidate it and sell it on to his foreign buyers with a profit. Philip Shepherd would certainly have been aware of the Tetbury Market House having been built in 1655, and no doubt realised the opportunities open to him in Minchinhampton. Also, with its height and second floor, the Minchinhampton Market House was to be a more imposing building. There would be skilled builders and quarrymen locally who could cope with such a project. These skills with locally sourced Cotswold stone are still evident today. With Tetbury as inspiration and the construction material readily available at local quarries, the project went ahead. This is Simmons Quarry in Burley, now filled in. Stone would have been supplied by one of the Weatherstone quarries, such as this. It was referred to as Weatherstone because of its resistance to damage by frost and rain. The roof tiles would have come from the other specialist quarries. With no machine power in the 1690s, all stone had to be cut and dressed by hand. Stroud Museum has a collection of hand tools which would have been in use then, donated by Frank Simmons when Burley Quarry was closed. No planning restrictions applied to the lord of the manor, so he chose his spot in prime position alongside the market square and implemented his grand design. In 1698, England was recovering from the first invasion since 1066. William and Mary had ousted James II in 1688 in a bloodless coup, the Glorious Revolution. There was still ill feeling between the Jacobean Catholics and the House of Orange Protestants. The Latin inscription in the market house, acknowledging William, possibly gives a clue to the majority religious leaning of this area at the time. But establishment religion was very much in a state of flux. If Philip Shepherd thought that his building was a safe investment, providing a comfortable income for him and his descendants, he was sadly mistaken. Within 50 years, the English Industrial Revolution had taken hold. The valleys around Minchinhampton became a centre for industrial cloth production, well placed with water power to take full advantage of mechanisation. The centuries-old wool culture and the activities associated with the trade collapsed in the face of industrialisation. At its peak, there were around 150 mills in the area. Minchinhampton soon became a hilltop anachronism. An almanac published in 1797 paints a dreary picture of the town and its market houses. Hampton to thee, of course, our visit is due, quiet, inert, declining, nothing new. 3 useless market houses to deplore thy present time and show thy state before. A soil where little thrives except these 3, namely parchment, physic, and divinity. As mentioned in the almanac, 2 other, less substantial market houses existed apart from the Shepherd building. Both were a row of cottages, probably developed from market stalls, the centre of the town being hemmed in by the glebe or the church land or the manor land. The upper island at the bottom of Butt Street was removed in 1858 to ease traffic flow. The lower island in the High Street was demolished by the owner, David Ricardo, in 1919, and the site donated for the construction of the War Memorial. The fact that the present market house was so robustly constructed probably saved it from suffering the same fate as the other 2 and provided a large covered space for communal activities, giving it an important association with the town. In 1732, the Bath Company of Comedians put on a season of 3 plays in the building, confirming its viability as a performance space. A copy of the Gainsborough portrait of Sarah Siddons, the great 18th century actress, hangs in the hall. She trod the boards in Bath, and while no record exists to confirm her appearance on stage in Minchinhampton, it is an attractive legend. By 1735, over 40 Quakers lived in Minchinhampton and met in houses in Well Hill and West End. As elsewhere, they appear to have been assaulted and abused by the locals for their beliefs. As their numbers increased, an appeal was made to the Bishop of Gloucester to allow them to use the market house as a place of worship. So in 1746, the request was granted. Within 50 years of its creation, the market house had turned from a house of mammon into a house of God. In 1755, a town fire engine was purchased and lodged in the Undercroft. The photograph shows the Malmesbury engine, which is of the same age. These manual engines were loaded onto a horse and cart and required 3 teams of operators, 1 to mind the hoses, 1 to pump, and 1 to direct the flow. The engine became a permanent feature, having its own space provided with open work doors so that the townsfolk could gaze at their purchase with pride. The Quakers were early pioneers in education. A system was created by Joseph Lancaster, consisting of 1 teacher in charge of over 100 pupils, with the more advanced pupils acting as teachers to the younger children. The Lord of the Manor in 1816, David Ricardo, supported the Lancastrian school for boys and girls in the market house. Under a teacher called Fenning Park, who was 17 years old when appointed, the market house school roll grew to 265 children in 1835. In 1868, a purpose-built school was opened near the site of the present school. By the 1850s, gas had been piped into the town, which allowed the market house to be used for evening functions, illuminated by gaslight. In 1854, a Christmas concert was arranged in the hall, bringing in a profit of £5. The Stroud Journal reported, "Persons comparatively inexperienced passed off the Christmas show admirably." Faint praise, an attitude of the local press maintained to this day. The Victorian temperance movement was keen on self-improvement, having a desire to keep up with the changing world around them and keep working folk away from the huge number of drinking establishments in the country. The Minchinhampton Mutual Improvement Association occupied the market house for 20 years until 1875. At its peak, 52 members took advantage of the association's instructive meetings, the committee claiming that for less than 1 penny a week, working men could spend the evening in a comfortable room, storing their minds with useful information. The pursuit of useful knowledge in the market house ranged from the prosaic to the bizarre. Many lectures were illustrated by magic lantern, the iPad of its day. In 1894, the Local Government Act was passed, giving the people of Minchinhampton the opportunity to elect their own local councillors instead of the vestry group run by a small body of leading and interested parishioners. 13 local councillors were to be elected, chosen from 2 parties, Conservative and Liberal. The electorate numbered around 700, and the first election was held in the market house. The hall only accommodated 200 people, and the vote was by a show of hands. So most of the voting population was disenfranchised, caused by the limited capacity of the market house. The Conservatives won all the seats, the result contested by the Liberals. The poll was taken again a few days later with no change to the outcome. The winning party was quite happy to continue the original voting arrangements for some years. By the start of the 20th century, another David Ricardo was lord of the manor, and in 1911 terms were agreed for the construction of a rear outside stairway to the building. To ease the burden of the administration of the market house, the Ricardos leased the building to a committee of local businessmen for £2 per annum for 7 years, under the proviso that it should only be used as a market house or a public hall. The lord of the manor remained responsible for the repair of the walls, roof and floor until 1919, when Colonel H.G. Ricardo finally decided to hand over the ownership of the building to the parish. During the time the Ricardos had owned the building, they had paved the area under and around the market house in 1859, removed the original dormer windows in the roof in 1870, and in 1911 made a rear entrance, added some ventilation and heating, but not much of the latter. The Minchinhampton Dramatic Society was formed in 1926 and used the market house as its theatre. Originally, a small stage was at the kitchen end of the hall, but gradually over the years the space was transformed into a functioning small theatre with a proscenium arch, dressing room, lighting and sound, and seating for around 120 people. Many well-known plays were performed here over the years, and in the last 20 years or so of its existence, the Society staged a number of West End musicals to much local critical acclaim. The present-day drama group, the Minchinhampton Players, has taken up the challenge to bring live theatre back to Minchinhampton. In 1950, the Minchinhampton Women's Institute also used the building as a meeting place. A WI market was held every week, a regular pantomime stage, and a choir formed. In 1974, the Minchinhampton Society was formed, which sought to maintain the character of the town and its surroundings. Throughout the centuries, the market house has had its ups and downs, its highs and lows, but with increasing emphasis on heritage and community involvement and sound investment in improvements, the market house should continue to have an integral part to play in 21st century Minchinhampton.